This is John from Packard Shutter, and while this is not a Packard Shutter actual application, it's something I do, and so I'm going to throw it up on my YouTube so you guys can learn from it and utilize the information. Anyways, what I'm doing here is I'm going to show you how to convert one of the Yashica 44 series of cameras to use 35mm film. Normally these cameras use 127, which is a cool format, but it's sometimes hard to get a hold of and it's expensive. 35mm is much more common and easier to get a hold of and get processed, so it's often a fun thing to shoot. You also get the full width of the film, you get the sprocket holes. Some people like that. I've got all three different variations of the Yashica 44. I've got the 44A, the 44, and the 44LM. The base process is the same for all of the cameras, with only differences relative to how you wind the film and count frames. So what you're going to need, I'm going to set two of these, well, I'm going to set one of these aside for now. What you will need a pair of scissors so that you can retrim the leader on the film so that it's kind of that shape. This is about a ½ inch wide at this point, and it tapers back. That's so that it will load into your 127 take-up spool. You still need a 127 take-up spool. So you're going to need a pair of scissors to trim that. You're going to need some black electrical tape, which, there it is. You're going to need a roll of black electrical tape. You're going to need a jeweler's screwdriver, flat blade, maybe ground down a little bit because it's really narrow, a pair of tweezers, some 5/16 washers. I have 4 of these. That works pretty good for me. I have a US quarter. That also works really nice. If you're in a different country, you might use a different denomination, but something that's about that size. And then a Sharpie if you're using the 44A. Okay, so what are we doing here? Well, this process is completely reversible, non-damaging. You can change it back whenever you want. It's easy to do. We're not going to do an actual conversion here, but I'm going to show you what needs to be done. Okay, the first thing, or one of the things you're going to want to do is on the back of every camera, including the 44A, is a red window, and that's used for frame counting. Well, we're not going to use that, and the window is actually a liability because 35mm doesn't have backing paper, and that's a light leak. So what we want to do is we want to cover up the red window with electrical tape. If you're wondering if you've used enough electrical tape, the answer is no. You'll probably want to put more on. You want to cover that up enough so it doesn't leak. This one has 2 layers. This one has about 4. I feel safer with this one than I do with this. 2 might be okay. If you're really feeling adventurous, you might try opening the back and sticking something underneath the pressure plate so that it covers up the red window from the inside as well. That's not necessary, but some people do it. Anyways, so what we're going to do, this is a 44LM. This has not been converted. This is a 44, and it has been converted. Now, what the difference is, if you look here real close, there is a screw right here, and a screw right here, and a roller right here. What we're going to do is we're going to take out this screw, we're going to take out this screw, we're going to remove this roller, and we're going to put those 2 screws back. That's the bulk of the conversion. This roller gets in the way of putting a 35mm film can in there. You can't get it in, so we got to take it out. So you're going to remove this screw, remove this screw. This is what your roller assembly looks like. It's a roller on a piece of black stamped metal. You're going to take this out. I like to put these screws back in the camera after I'm done so that I don't lose them. And as you look at this is a 44 that's been converted. You can see the screw is still in there. It's in there because I put it back because that way I don't lose it. Now I'm going to take this roller, I'm going to put it in this bag here that I got that says Yashica 44LM, I don't know if you can see that, Yashica 44LM 35mm conversion parts. That's my bag for my conversion parts. So I will eventually put this roller in that bag and put it aside so I don't lose it when I want to reverse this. So I've taken the roller out. Now what I need to do, if we take the film, let's rewind it just a little bit here so that we're not getting a huge mess. If we take the film and set the cassette in there, we can see that it can move around quite a bit, and it can move a long ways that way because this hole happens to line up with that little stud. that's where the washers come in. What we're going to do is we're going to take the washers, we're going to put them over that little stud, 4 of them. In this case, seems to work really nice and be just the right height. So, well, I had a piece of tape here, but I seem to have lost it. So we'll just get another one. I'm going to take a little piece of painter's tape. You don't need much, about like that. And I'm just going to stick it over the thing, over the washers, and stick it to the housing enough so that it stays in place. And I really only need this for while I'm loading the film, but now it's in place. I'm going to put my cassette in, and it still has some play, but we can see that, okay, it wants to move that way a little bit more to stay centered. So that's where my quarter comes in. I'm going to take my quarter, I'm going to drop my quarter in there, and I don't happen to have a spool in it right now. We're going to put a spool back in. Okay, so we got a spool in. We're going to wind this. Just get it started. Now, we've just got it started. It's in. That's going to bounce out. This is going to bounce out a little bit. This is just started because it's all loose, because it's open. But when we close it, that's going to the pressure plate's going to be in place. The spool's going to get pushed into the chamber. We're going to do maybe a couple of winds and a little bit, and then we're going to reset that, and we're ready to go. It's all set for when you're winding. What you'll want to do is, for each frame, this doesn't have any kind of an interlock. You can just keep winding as long as you want. But what we're going to do is, one wind is one frame, and then we're going to give it a little bit to put a gap in between frames. And we're going to do that every time. Now, when you do all of the winding through, you'll notice that each time the lever moves a little bit less far. It's got a little bit shorter throw. When it gets to 12, it's going to just start clicking. You still need to do the one frame and a little bit. So that's it for the 44. That's everything you need to do. It's got the black tape. When you get done, you're going to have to take it out in a dark bag or in a dark room or changing bag or whatever, because there's no way to rewind the film. That's pretty much all there is to it for a 44. For a 44A, you're going to run into the problem that this just winds, and you don't know how far it's going to have to go. So what you're going to have to do for the 44 is you're going to have to sacrifice a roll like I have here, and you're going to have to use it to mark out what your frame spacing is going to be. As this works out, the first frame is about 3/4 of a turn, maybe a smidgen more. But what you're going to do, you're going to load it up, and this is why it's with a roll of junk film. You have to do all of this in daylight, because we're going to wind a little bit, get it started, and then we're going to do is we're going to take our Sharpie, and you can see I've marked all over this already. What you're going to do is you're going to mark the beginning and the end of the frame, and then you're going to count winds and see how far you have to wind it in order to be another frame, and then keep track of that, because each time it's going to be a little bit less that you have to wind it. So you're going to wind a frame, mark it, wind a frame, mark it, and you have to keep track each time you wind a frame. How far did I wind that? Was that a half a turn? Was it 3/4? That's what you got to keep track of. So because of all that, the 44A is kind of the least desirable camera of the three to do the conversion on. Okay, then the other thing that we've got going on here is with the 44LM, this one with the light meter on it. This one has another different problem in that it's got this funky, different kind of frame counter. This is more of a higher end Yashica frame counter. This has a roller that's pressure loaded to wind on the film or on the backing paper and count frames. So what we're going to need to do, because we don't have that, I take a piece of painter's tape and wind it, you know, just enough to go around once. What we need to do is give the roller something to stick to, some friction. This one hasn't been converted, so I can't fit the cassette down in there. But by putting a little bit of painter's tape on it, it gives a little bit better surface to grab on this plastic end of the spool, and that way it will it can frame count for you. I think it does pretty good. You'll have to play with it. You know, treat your first roll that you do with this as a complete test roll. Don't count on it being anything good. But it has this thing, interlock, where you turn it and then it goes based on how far that goes. So anyways, that's how that works. That's my tutorial on how to convert the Yashica 144 series for 35mm film. If you have any questions, I hang out in the 127 Film Shooters group on Facebook or on the Vintage Camera Collectors group. You can find me there. You can find me, you can email me at packardshutter@gmail.com, and I can answer questions if you have it, or just make comments in the YouTube video, and I will respond there. I'll get a notification that you commented, and I can respond, and then everyone can learn from your questions. Anyhow, that's it. I hope you enjoy shooting 127 film, or enjoy shooting 35mm film in your 127 camera. Hope this was informative. Talk to you later. Thanks.